Hello, sweet people. Welcome to Croissant Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Last week we made the croissant dough, and that video is still on my Facebook page, so if you want to refer back to that, please do. It'll always be there for you. But today we're going to make things that are a little more out of the box for croissant. So last time we made plain and chocolate, which everybody knows about. So today we're going to be making cronuts, bear claws, bear sound, Danish, pain au raisin, or it means bread of raisins, but whatever, it's tasty. And to my mind, the best cinnamon buns ever made with croissant dough. So all of these things, and these are little like donut, so good. So, order of business, today is Ray's birthday. So say happy birthday to Raymo! Another thing, around September 15th, this will be coming out. You see here, a feast rooted in tradition. And that's my feast here. And you'll get a story about Oktoberfest, harvest, and real quick look, some of my mom's recipes. You gotta buy it. So let's get to cronuts first. And I always get this question, what is a baked cronut? Can I make a baked cronut? I'm like, of course you can make a baked cronut. It's called a croissant. So in order to get the cronut, you have to make the croissant. In order to get the cronut to be a real cronut, you gotta fry it, not bake it. You can make a donut shape and bake it. It's still a croissant. I hear a Victor kitty playing in the back. So let's do that first. We're gonna fry, and then we're gonna do some other stuff that's baked. But this is what makes it so stinking delicious. You gotta fry it. So I have my oil at 350 already. I'm gonna get my dough. So I made this dough yesterday. It rested overnight. And so you can see our gorgeous layers. Remember last week I taught you how to do this? Ta-da! So now we're going to be rolling it out. And like anything that we would bake, we have to proof the cronuts first. But what I like to do is, the lovely thing about cronuts and anything that you're not doing a lot of folds on, like a plain croissant where you wind it and wind it and wind it, this is a pretty quick, relatively, proof. So I usually don't go beyond 2 hours for it. And it's actually quite a bit better not to be like fully poofy proof, because it's really hard to handle the dough. And what I like to do is I will put a fair amount of flour on my sheet pan before I place down the cut cronuts, so that when I have to move them to the fryer, they're easier to pick up. And sometimes I do a really quick chill, like for 5 minutes, so that they sturdy up a little. That does make the oil drop in temperature, so I start my oil temperature a little higher. So I do it at 350, so I'll usually aim for like 370, 390, and then it'll drop once the cooler cronuts are dropped in there. If you have any questions, that is what I'm here for. So I'm getting this to about a little thicker than a 1/4 inch thick. And one thing I want to do is get my, do I have it here already? My cutter. And here I had some I already cut out. I will have this ready to go. And this is just a standard donut cutter. And look how lovely. So about that thick, you see? But you'll also get the donut holes, which is super great. You have something to snack on right away. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour down. And it is true, once you have flour on something that you fry, it tends to dirty the oil rather quickly. So before I put it in, if I see too much flour on the top, I'll brush it off quickly. But you know, you just kind of live with it. You live between making it easier to put them into the fryer or getting your oil dirty a little more quickly. You know, you have to make compromises in baking, as in life. That is life. So you can get from one batch of croissant dough quite a few cronuts. I usually, as I said, proof for about 2 hours. Hot day, it will be less. So you really have to watch them. And the donut holes tend to proof really fast, so which is fantastic. You'll have a snack as you're waiting to do the big fry. The other thing I have ready is pastry cream for filling. And you can also have your glaze ready. And I just do a really simple glaze of confectioner's sugar and a little milk. And then I just drizzle that on top when I'm done. So there's some left over, but I will actually save this and make something else with it. And now, this will go to proof. Whoop. And I cover it with plastic. Make sure it's completely covered because it can get a skin on top. Any yeasted dough will get a skin on top as you're proofing if you don't cover well, and that impedes rise. So always make sure you've got a liberal roll of plastic wrap handy to keep them nice and covered. And then I will put them on my speed rack. And luckily for us, I have some ready to go. And you see that these have risen quite a bit. They're nice and soft. See the flowers there. And it's going to be, I chilled them for a little bit, so it's not so hard to pick up. Before I put them in, let's check the oil. It's around 320. Even if it's around 300, we'll do it because, geez, we're live. What do you expect? Yeah, babe. So we're looking good. So I like to do a donut hole first, a cronut hole, I should say. And, you know, Dominic Ansel invented these puppies, and the name is trademark, copyrighted, everything, because his idea was so genius that it's like, dudes, everybody's stealing my idea and selling them and calling them Cronuts. So now, if you go into a shop, you'll see fried croissant. They legally can't say Cronut unless it's his shop. So if you do see them saying Cronut, call the police. Criminal alert. So see how much they puff up? And I have chopsticks handy to do some turning. So any questions? We'll check keep telling attention. Questions, people? Ask away. If you have questions about last week's croissant dough bonanza, also ask away. I'm going to make this a little less. And so this is looking good. Our oil is looking perfect. It is frying up nicely. I will put in our first cronut. Gentle, gentle. High wire act with the oil. Getting some oil. So it'll get nice and puffy. So 1 minute to 2 on one side. And you have to keep on top of these because they like to stay on one side and they might brown too much. So you just, that's why the chopsticks are great. Make it so much easier to handle. You can also use a wok for frying, you know, whatever is convenient to you. Oh, I'm using vegetable oil, plain old vegetable oil. You can use canola oil, something that is relatively tasteless because you don't want to impart any added taste. It's so buttery and wonderful. You want something that is just plain old. Don't use olive oil. And something with a relative high heat capability, something like olive oil, not so good. Peanut oil is great, but it has a very distinctive flavor and smell as you're frying. And so you sit here just like with donuts and you watch them and they're looking like cute little babies frying away. And so I have a slotted spoon for my little donut holes. Aren't they beauty? Woo. And just like you would with donuts or anything, I will have, this is actually on a cooling rack, and then I'll put my little paper on top, and I have my sugar ready for dredging, and I've also made pastry cream, as I said, another clean toothpick, poke, which I'm poking, and I'm going to check one side, and you can usually tell that they are getting ready when you look in the middle of the hole, and it starts getting brown around the edges here. And then you know that the underside is doing well. Because you don't want to manipulate it too much, otherwise they could deflate on you because they're still rising. But I can see really nice color here. So I'm going to flip that puppy. Isn't that pretty? I mean, come on. Gorge. Look at that. And you don't have to do pastry cream. You can do curd. You could even do jam. So this is a lot of work, right, doing these croissants and then frying them. So you can just have jam in the center, like an old jelly donut, but a little fancier. So if you have any clever ideas for filling cronuts, please share. We all want to know. You could also do them savory. So you could do a little like cream cheese filling and then do, right as they come out, sprinkle a little cheese on top and let it melt. That would be pretty gorgeous. Because these are, you know, they're pan flavor. They don't need to be just sweet. They can also be savory. Sprinkle with bacon, which, you know, they could also be sweet with bacon because ain't that a thing. Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah. And so we keep frying them until they are equally brown on the other side. And again, about 1 to 2 minutes on the one side, and usually a little less because it's gotten some heat and started cooking on the other. But you really have to be Johnny on the spot. You can't walk away. You have to make sure that your temperature is relatively stable. If it gets too hot, then the outside browns and burns too quickly, but then the inside doesn't set. So you get a really awful taste sensation. Well, it's not a sensation at all. It's a big bleh. So just stay on top of the oil temperature. If we are hovering around 300, I'm happy. If we're a little bit above, so much the better. See, we're there at 300. Oh my gosh. See, I can make it even a little hot. How awesome is that? But once you get above 350, it tends to get a little too hot and will brown too quickly. And then this is nice because you can just kind of hang out and the smell is absolutely outrageous, and then the neighbors are probably going to come around and start asking for donuts, which is fine. We have weekend donut parties here. Aren't you jealous? And now we can have weekend cronut parties. And you can too. So if you want to know what I'm using here, this is an induction burner. And I originally bought this when I had a book called Sugar Baby, and I was traveling the country throwing sugar in the air, hot sugar, doing spun sugar and crazy stuff to do demos to sell the book. So I traveled with my induction burner, and you'll notice too, when you watch television cooking shows, like say the Today Show, they always use an induction burner because they're not allowed to have an open flame on set because, you know, who knows what could happen. But now you'll notice, now you'll like be watching those shows and go, wait a second. That's an induction burner. And you need a special pan. So of course, the pan that usually works with this is the most expensive one, all-clad. So you already spent a couple $100 on the induction burner, and then you're like, oh geez, now I've got to buy really expensive cookware. But the good thing is that induction burners are becoming more and more popular, that they're making cookware that is actually pretty, look at that, yummers. A little more here. Is Dory piping in?
Will you eat every last cronut and throw yourself over a chair and say,
every time. Yes, Ray will, and it's his birthday, so he's allowed to. So we're going to let those go, and I'm going to show you what I do. A little checky poo. So this is how I fill my cronuts. You usually want to let them cool a little more than I'm going to let them for a couple reasons. They're hot as hell. And the other reason is that I'm putting pastry cream in them. So you want it to be cool enough that the pastry cream doesn't melt in there. Not that that would be a bad thing, but it would kind of change the texture of the cronut. And we kind of worked hard to get gorgeous lift and yada, yada, yada. So you want to wait a little bit to do this. But, you know, we ain't got time. So we're going to do it now. So I'm going to poke a little hole or a big hole. 1, 2, 3, crispy, 4. And this is vanilla pastry cream, and it's got lovely vanilla bean in it. And then I'm going to shove that in there, and I'm going to squeeze. See, it's already coming out at the other end. Squeeze. Yeah, baby. Squeezing. And you'll notice that when we cut into this, you'll see primarily the pastry cream on the bottom layers, but that's fine. When you bite into it, you get flavor all around. So that's just perfectly fine with me. Taking these guys out. And then next up, we're going to dredge in sugar. So it's easier to fill it first before you dredge it in sugar, because once it's dredged in sugar and you get your hands on it, then you start brushing it off. So this is kind of the method. And you cover your holes. Look, the pastry cream was coming out of there. And get it in the middle, because why the hell not? There we go. And then for the pretty, I said before that this is just a combination of confectioner sugar and some milk. And I don't use a recipe. I just put confectioner sugar in first, and then and see, the other reason you want this to be a little cool is that once you pipe this on, it'll start melting the glaze too quickly. But I like it to be about this thick, because either way, usually when you top it, it's a little warm, and then it starts to melt just a little so that it becomes a flat glaze. It isn't so perky, and it's perfect. And it will get a little skin over it. So while it's still like this, while it's still tacky, if you're going to use sprinkles, this is when you sprinkle it on. This is when you go to town. That's Cronut, baby. We'll fill the other ones. And then we'll cut into it once they have rested a little, just to admire our work. And I'll do this. I think that's better. Any questions, please ask. And the pastry cream recipe, I will post after this. It might be a little late because I've got some birthday fun to do, but it will be up. But you have this recipe for the croissant dough. Watch the video again if you need to. It'll always be there for you. And I will fill it. And this stuff, pastry cream, is the stuff of angels. I eat this it's like pudding. It's like custard. Yeah, baby. Look at that. That's a happy, happy pastry cream. And so, dredgy, dredgy. That's a little too much, right? And then flip it over.
Beth asked, do they need to be warm when you fill them, or can you chill them and fill them later?
Beth just asked whether they need to be warm when you fill them, or can you chill them and then fill them later. So it is better. I'm doing this while they're still pretty warm because, we're doing this live. What I like to do, I do in fact like to make sure that they're a little warmer than room temperature, but not this hot straight out of the oil. Too cool, and it's too hard to cover them in the sugar. And it's kind of nice to eat them when they're still just slightly warm, but you can. I wouldn't chill them in the refrigerator. You can keep them out. If you chill them in the refrigerator, they lose some of their texture because of the humidity. But yeah, I'm doing this far sooner than I otherwise would, simply because live. But thank you for the question, Beth. And then sprinkles. Remember, do it when it's still tacky so they stick. Go around, baby. And if you know that you were going to make these a weekend ahead of time, you can make the croissant dough, roll them out, stamp out the shapes, the donut shapes, and then cover them and freeze them for the date, right? So you've got to do them on Sunday. You freeze them until Saturday night. You take them out on Saturday and you put them in the refrigerator. And then the second you wake up, you take them out of the refrigerator, keeping everything covered with saran wrap. And then you just let them proof for a few hours. And then you've got cronuts. You get your oil ready, and you're banging. You're ready to go. And then these are fantastic, too, because they're like the best donut hole ever. I'm sorry, they are. Look at that. That's gorgeous. I'm going to get rid of this puppy. Every time we're going to have a little surprise hiding. Well, that wasn't so hidden. And you have to find it. I'm going to wrap this up. Always wrap it up as soon as you can, your dough, because it'll continue proofing. And I want to use this later for something fun. Who knows? Like make a little kouign-amann, a little Breton cake with that. Ta-da. All right, we can get rid of this. Now on to bear claws. So, you know, different people do different fillings for bear claws, but it's usually almond, and the recipes differ. This is mine. I use almond paste in my filling. Others just use sliced almonds and they grind them up with some sugar and butter. But gosh, I love almond paste so much. So I'll use it whenever I can. So it's a little expensive, and so if you'd rather not do that, you can look for recipes for like an almond cream is traditionally what it's called. Not a frangipan, but an almond cream. So, you know, you're good at Googling, I'm sure. But mine has my favorite. I can just eat almond paste and marzipan for days. It was one of my mother's favorite things. She used to get, we were vegan, and she was so healthy, and she wouldn't tell us when she got deliveries from Germany, and she would get marzipan. And back then it was harder to get all the gorgeous stuff that's available in Germany. You know, now we've got Costco and Amazon and all that stuff, but back in the day we didn't. Also didn't get Nutella. We would have that shipped from Germany. And gummy bears. They didn't have gummy bears here. That was huge. It's like, who are these heathens? They don't have gummy bears. Now we have gummy bears. So she used to have marzipan stashed around the house, and we were eating so healthy, vegan, brown rice, tofu. And once I walked in on her in the kitchen, and she was literally going with the marzipan. So I think it runs in the blood, our love of all things almond. Any questions?
Erica wants to know how you stay so thin and fit with all this baking.
I actually am wearing a Spanx that goes from here to here, and you usually don't see my feet, but my feet are this big because it pushes everything down. When you do this for a living, you tend not to eat everything, but with me, it's a cycle. There are weeks where I'll be like, yeah, whatever, I don't have to eat this. And there are other weeks, I'm like my mother. Again, I think this is genetic, where like if a Cronut's in front of me, I will just inhale the whole thing. And then on those days when I'm feeling a little more gluttonous, I will not do any Facebook Lives. I will just be eating. And until I feel fit again, I won't do anymore. But actually, now that I think about it, I think that Spanx idea is really clever, and somebody has to do it. To just shove everything down. Oh, Ray's going to make one. Ray's actually making his own Batman suit, so... Hey, I'm proud of you, Buster. It's super cool. A little more flour. Any questions? Ask away. Anyone? Bueller?
You still call guest Devo.
Oh, well done. Devo. That is what's behind me. Don't let it scare you. So this is bear claws. And let's take a little measurements of this little puppy. And I want it to be about 1/4 inch thick. And then I want it to be at least, whoa, I made it a little wider than I usually would, but these are going to be Mondos. So I like to aim for 6 to 7. We got to 8, so we're special. But we'll also be trimming a little. And there's that. Now I'm going to take my almond paste. And this isn't just almond paste. This is actually a combination of almond paste, almonds, some butter, some sugar, some egg. Whoop-a. And you just want to keep it in the middle. Whoop-a. Left the rest of it for the pain au raisin. So otherwise I'd put a little more on there. You can kind of go to town in the middle because we're going to seal a lot of this. And then watch. It's a little thick. It's a little thick, people. We're going to have monsters. So then I'm going to do this. I will do a little.
Arnold wants to know how you prevent tears in the lamination process.
Patience, temperature, and the other thing is that using my...
you have to say it.
Oh, sorry. So the question from Arnold is, how do I prevent tears in the lamination process? And I really think it's ingredient and process and technique. Temperature is key as well, but also proper hydration and extensibility of the dough. So all those things that you add to it, like I do the baker's milk powder that provides a lot of oomph and just patience. So this is going to be probably the biggest bear claw in the history of bear claws. Don't worry, I'm going to cut this into pieces. This isn't going to be a single bear claw. Although, wait, everybody's doing Guinness Book of World Records things? Maybe we should do that.
Arnold also wants to know if it's possible to freeze the dough baby.
Arnold wants to know if you can freeze a dough baby, or pâton, is what the French called it. Yes, you can. You can freeze it. You would want to do that. Usually what I do is I give it a rest for 2 hours, and then I freeze it. But don't let it ferment for too long. But yeah, you can totally freeze it. Before you use it, put it in the refrigerator overnight. And then, you're looking good. And then you can use it in the morning. You can go about your rolling and your proofing as you would if you had just made it the day before.
Lauren wants to know where you get a baking tape measure.
Well, I got this one at Home Depot. Oh, so the question is, where did I get the baking tape measure? And it's actually not a baking tape measure. It's where I get a lot of my equipment for baking is at Home Depot. So I just make sure that it's only used for baking. And that's that. And I also have a yardstick that I got at Joann Fabric, where you can get just at any craft store, that if I'm doing just constant measuring, I will Velcro it to my table. So let's do this.
Peggy wants to know how cold do you keep your kitchen when you do laminated dough. She's in Florida. It's hot.
Well, it's hot here right now too, and it's timing. So I would like my kitchen to be a little under 70 degrees, ideally. There was actually, that would be ideal, especially for laminated dough. Otherwise, you'll be running back and forth into putting your stuff into the refrigerator, which is what you would do in that case if you feel like your dough is getting too warm. But ideally, a little bit below 70. I visited this bakery right outside of San Francisco. I think it's called Galaxy Bakery. It was, want to watch? Bear claw noise. So then I would place to proof, and before you put it in the oven, after they've proofed, about double their size, egg wash again, and then I put slivered almonds on top. I had them somewhere, but we're not going to do that right now. But you would definitely cover this, as I will, with plastic wrap. And that's just a really easy bear claw. And the filling, I make it in my food processor. You can make it in a blender. And you just put everything in at the same time. There are no steps. It's like shove ingredients in food processor, put on food processor, use paste. It's that easy. I mean, because after we did all this work with this, why do we want to sit around and spend hours making almond paste? So proof, a few hours. This morning mine took about 2-3 hours to proof. And as I said before, I like a longer proof. I like a cooler proof if I can, for croissant especially. And then once they are proofed, I egg wash them. And my egg wash is, for these, 1 egg yolk, no water, and a little hit of salt. Whisk really well, and the salt helps in breaking up the albumin. You know, when you see those nice, lovely egg white chunks just hanging on, that'll break them down. Or if you have a immersion blender, if you want to get really persnickety, immersion blender is your friend. So next we're going to do double trouble. We're going to do both pain au raisin, which is that lovely raisin yumminess pastry that you see so often in France. And we're going to do my cinnamon rolls, which are my #1 cinnamon rolls ever. I swear I'm coming back. You don't have to follow me. Jeez. Don't follow me. Leave me alone. Okay. I don't get privacy. No one leaves me alone. So now, this is about, I'd say 2/3 of a pâton dough baby. Made it yesterday. Feeling good. So for my, let's get this side. Oh, that looks pretty. Come on. Bow, chicka, bow, bow.
Keep it still.
Okay, sorry. Keep it still. and rest. So I'm going to split this in two. One side for pain raisin, the other side for cinnamon buns. And I don't know. I love these cinnamon buns more than any other cinnabon, even more than Cinnabon is how much I love these cinnamon buns. Because they get, if you've ever had, have you had couinement? It's a Breton cake, which is a laminated dough, but when you do the lamination, you get sugar in there. So it's kind of like a palmier, but with yeasted croissant dough. And everything goes a lot faster because sugar is hygroscopic and it starts leaching moisture. So the whole thing goes really fast. The turns, the rise, because everything is becoming goopy and weird and wonderful. And then you bake it off. I think it's crisp. I'm drooling right now. It gets crispy and buttery and caramelized and a little crunchy. And so this is my cinnamon rolls have a lot of that texture where they're not flaky because I'm covering them in so much sugar, but they have a wonderful crunch and that really wonderful, wonderful texture. So if you're looking for like an airy cinnamon bun, this isn't it. But if you're looking for the best cinnamon bun ever, I got you covered. Okay. And I don't know if they still do this. Walton's is a little bakery in Austin. And I brought them a couple recipes and I trained the initial staff in some of my techniques. And that's one of the recipes I said, you guys, you got to make this. Your customers will love it. So if you're in Austin, Texas, hopefully you can stop by Walton's and see they have the cinnamon buns there. If they don't, go like that. Demand them. Or not, just make them yourself. What am I saying? I'm showing you. So a little more. And then I just wanted a little thinner. So this is, if you have made cinnamon buns, any kind of roll, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, come on. Easy peasy, fresh and squeezy. So let's get a bead on size, because I always like to know what I'm aiming for. I've done this so often that I eyeball everything now, but I think it's only fair that I tell you what's happening. Oh, you know, someone asked about the measuring tape. I don't know if you've seen the, who asked? Lauren. Well, Lauren, hi, Lauren B. You asked about the measuring tape. There is a store called Muji. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It is so fabulous. 18 by 12. Digging it. And they have, in my travel pastry kit, I have one of their measuring tapes. They're this small, so you can fit it into a pencil case. And I adore it. That's my travel measuring. You know, because as one does, travels with pastry. I do, anyway.
Sandy Warner, question.
Yes, Sandy, ask away.
So cinnamon buns made with brioche dough is basically the same but a different bread dough?
Well, made with brioche dough, it's more like, no, it's like a regular cinnamon bun. A brioche dough is a sweet dough, a little fancier, say, than Cinnabon. But you'll still get that texture, that airiness that brioche brings, which is more like a regular American sweetened dough. This is a different texture altogether. Similar. Want me to move that?
Yes, please.
Is this looking unattractive? Is this bothering you? What did it do to you? Okay, so now I'm going to slather this with nice and soft butter. And yes, your hands will get dirty. Yummy, yummy. But, well, you know, Sandy just asked whether it was similar to using brioche dough. And, you know, brioches would be far more similar to a traditional American cinnamon roll. Or Schnecke, as the Germans would call it, because, you know, they invented it. Where was I going with this? Where was I going with this? I don't even know where I was going with this. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you with that thought, with that kernel. And then cinnamon sugar. Come on, cinnamon sugar. Come on down. And you spread it out. Remember, this was 18 by 12, but I split it in half so I could do halvesies, halvesies. So what you would be doing, if you were doing a whole roll of your whole pâton in this, what you'd be aiming for is a 1/4 inch thick, 12 inches wide. And then the length obviously will vary because you're going to use the whole pâton. In this one we used about 2/3 of a pâton, so can we do the math there? Add 9, 27 inches long, yeah. Sounds good. Okay, now we do the fun stuff. So now I like to make sure I squish this down just a little and I start my roll. Boop. There. And now I've got my handy dandy a little over an inch, right? These proof in about 2 hours. And if you see a little moisture start to seep, and that usually happens when it's a little warmer out, that is totally normal. That is the sugar drawing moisture from the flour. So if you make palmier and you keep them in the fridge overnight and they get nice and goopy, which is a lovely thing because it helps them stick together in the oven, same thing. It's leaching that moisture. That's what it likes to do. If you've ever combined egg yolks and sugar in for a recipe and you've walked away and then you've come back and you found chunks in your egg yolks and that are really hard, that's because it's called burning, though it hasn't officially burned, or cooking. It's where the sugar starts leaching moisture from the egg yolks and then leaving behind these little nuggets of UGG, which is totally no fun. So if you have a recipe that calls for you to whisk together egg yolks and sugar, you combine them at the very last minute, right before you're finishing the rest of the process. Otherwise, you'll start cooking those egg yolks, and it's horrible for the texture. It's just not good for the recipe in general. But that's the nature of sugar. The sugar's doing that. It's not you. You've not done anything like horrendously wrong in the process, except for letting the egg yolks and the sugar sit around too long.
Beth wants to know your source for those large muffin papers.
So Beth wants to know my source for these large muffin papers. I got these through an Italian company that I cannot recall at the moment, but I do believe that King Arthur Flour carries, they're Italian, carries some of them, and Amazon does as well. I will do a little research and I will post it on my page when I find it because they're great. You bake with them, and you can actually use them twice. They withstand a lot of abuse and baking. But they are officially disposable, and they're from the same people that, if you've ever seen those beautiful little loaf papers, and they usually have some gold embellishments on them, and they're a little darker than that, the same company makes these. So this is the almond cream, the same stuff that I put in the bear claws, recipe to be posted. And this is for the pain au raisin. And you see how similar the process is. Before I smeared butter, now I'm smearing almond paste. Yummy, yummy. A nice coating. I like to make sure that it is thick enough that I can't see through to the dough. Oh, that's a nice chunk of almond paste. I'll leave that there. That's my piece. Okay, guys, if you've got questions, I'm here for you. It's 40 minutes. It's Ray's birthday. It's a big day. Wish Ray happy birthday. Ray says no. I say yes. And then now it's time for the raisin and the pain au raisin. I let these soak for about an hour in a little hot water and rum. you don't need to do the rum. You can do vanilla instead. They probably have the same alcohol content, quite frankly. And then I'm going to, so they get nice and plump when you do that. And you make sure to use hot water and let them sit for like an hour would be fine, probably half hour as well. Sometimes I let it sit overnight.
Amanda wants a mini tour of the bakery, baking space.
You can do, well, we've got lights up, so you know we're hiding stuff over there. But that's where I do my decorating in my pantry area. My big mixer, little mixers, ovens over there. My pastry cart's hiding over there. That's when I travel. I've got my, when I'm in New York, I take my pastry cart. I'll pull it out in a second. And I have it loaded with pastries. So I'm walking around the city. People look at me like, you can do so many weird things in the city. You know, you can expose yourself, and people are like, yeah, whatever. I run around with a big pastry cart, and people are like, what are you doing? What are you doing with that pastry? Like, oh, geez, I didn't know it was illegal. So raisins. If you want to know what's back there, that's no longer, that's going out to the farm area of life. So raisins, right? And then same thing. Boop. And roll. And same, you know, pain raisins are often a little thinner than I make them, but I do the same. I do the same size for all of my pastries. Mondo. I have one size and one speed, Mondo. Sometimes a serrated knife is easier for this because you are cutting through the raisins, but just make sure you have a sharp knife.
Jane wants to know, does it have to be almond paste? Is there an alternative?
Jane wants to know, and I bet I know which Jane this is, wants to know if there's an alternative. You know, you could just do a pastry cream. You needn't do almond anything, and just because pastry cream bakes up beautifully, just as this would. It's got the eggs, it's got the thickener of the eggs. So just use a vanilla pastry cream. You don't have to deal with the almond at all.
Monique asked, do you like the metal surface better?
So Monique wants to know if I like the metal surface better for working. It depends on what I'm doing. When I teach at King Arthur Flour, they have really lovely butcher block surfaces, which I really, really like. But when I'm kind of rolling out and have pastry cream and stuff oozing out, kind of like the metal better for cleaning. I work a lot on marble, but I think whatever is a nice, cool surface, really flat, is fine. If you've got a laminate countertop, fine. Just, you know, make sure that you are good about flouring it, or sometimes when I don't like to use flour on things, little spray, nonstick cooking spray is perfect. Let's just talk, because we're not going to sit around and proof this together. But these will be finished differently before they go in the oven. Once they're proofed, I put a little coarse sugar, like this, on top of the cinnamon buns, like that, and I just sprinkle it on top. And it gets a little moist on top, wallet proof, so this will stick. But for the pain raisin, I just do a nice coat on the sides and on the top of egg wash, so it gets nice and shiny. So if Ray would do us the honors and show us what that looks like.
Julie asked, you don't stretch the dough at all when rolling?
You know, I don't, simply because, so Julie wants to know that I don't, she asks whether I stretch the dough as I roll, and I don't, because I like an evenness to the roll, to all the layers, and it tends that as you stretch it, the ends get thinner than I should say the middle gets thinner than the end. Does that make sense? And that's just my preference. It's my preference texturally and also aesthetically. I like aesthetic things that look well-formed and even, and it eats really well too. So it's not just that I like aesthetics and I'm putting flavor on the back burner. I just think it's a lovely thing. And when you have a roll like this, it proofs pretty evenly for me. And it makes for a really gorgeous bun.
Can you spell your website?
So my website is gbakes.com. So the question is, where's my website? What's my website? Who am I? What am I? It's gbakes, Gbakes. Is that how you spell bakes? Yeah. .com. And you can find loads of recipes there, including the croissant ingredient list. And I'll be posting pastry cream and the almond cream there as well. So one last quick thing. I'm just going to show you how to cut something. You just stay. You stay away. Let's clean this up, shall we?
Jeannie wants to know if your apron is linen.
My apron is linen. I think it's...
Peggy wants to know.
Yes, Peggy?
Can you show how you would make a croissant just like Mr. Holmes' Bakehouse makes in San Fran?
Well, I could if I had a... what is it? Huh? Is it out of croissant dough? If it is what I've never had one, I'm assuming it's just you stamp out a round shape, a biscuit shape, a muffin shape, and then just bake it flat.
What about a muffin tin?
You can put it in a muffin tin, yeah, sure. I don't know. I've never had one.
We'll go research.
We'll research it, yeah. So here, little piece, our dough. And I just wanted to show you a Danish cut that I adore. So sometimes when you see things like this, you go, how did they do that? Inquiring minds want to know. I'm going to show you. Ray's hungry. You've got food right behind you. Look at that. You can have a cronut. You can have... We're going to have to slice into a cronut before we go. We say bye-bye. Okay, so let's do it really quick, because, you know, we all have things to do. I know you guys have things to do. But I'm so glad you spent some time with us.
Monique likes your rolling pin.
Thank you, Monique. Ray got it for me at Simon Pierce. And we were talking about what kind of wood it was last time, and I still haven't figured out. Is this really a blue wood? Did they dye it somehow? I don't know.
My storage is almost full.
Okay, so really quick before we say bye-bye. Square-ish, and then you cut like so. You go boop. One more. And then you meet it here. But do not go all the way to this end. Here, leave that. You can go a little more, but not more. And then here, leaving that uncut. And then cut all the way through on these edges. Uncut. Make sure you cut through well. And then with egg wash here, here. And press only very gently. You would proof just like that before you put it in the oven. You could put some of that almond cream in there, or you could put a really quick cream cheese filling like for a cheese Danish. But first, let's kind of, before we say goodbye, let's cut into a cronut, shall we? Like this.
I'm showing what that looks like.
Oh my gosh. That just is an oozy happy thing. That's today's cronut. This is what your bear claw would look like after it's baked. Remember, a little egg wash, a little sparkle sugar, some almonds before you bake it. This is the pain au raisin. It just got that egg wash, so it's nice and shiny. And the tins kind of leave that, well, it's not a tin, it's paper, but it leaves a little lovely thing. And then here is the cinnamon bun. Best thing ever. Still in the thing. And then here's that lovely little, look at that little twisty turn. Isn't that pretty? And when you fill it before you bake it, the filling weighs down the middle. So you get this lovely rise around the edges and a showcase in the middle. And that's it. That is our Cronuts, bear claws, Danish.
No.
What?
We'll stand there.
Oh, he's, sorry, it's too hot. Thank you, I'm too hot. So we did Cronuts, bear claws, Danish, pain au raisin, cinnamon buns. Fabulous day. If you didn't see last week's Croissant demo, where I actually make the dough, where I made all of this stuff, including plain and chocolate croissant, please go visit. It's still on this page. Just scroll down and it's right there. This video will stay on my page as well, so you can watch them all day, at work, whatever you like, you know. And then online on gbakes.com, I will post the recipes for the fillings. And if you have any questions at all, you can continue asking. It needn't have been a live question. It won't be a dead question, but it will be a not live question. And I will answer it as soon as I can. And have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you.